All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I see a lot of familiar and some new names, so excited to host you again. Hopefully everybody will enjoy this webinar because as you know, like I really try to focus it on a really interesting topic that we are seeing. We are trying to be very different from other webinars. We do not want to make this to turn this into a sales pitch in any way. So we want to keep it as educational as possible. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about customer strategies and have invited a guest who thinks about strategy and technology all the time. I'm very excited to host him. What's interesting about today's topic is that it's relevant to a lot of what I'm seeing today. Most companies are talking about a shift towards profitability. And I wanted to explore what that means, because you can put in a lot of money towards a business and grow it and make it look profitable. And it might even be able, you might even be able to position it for an M&A event, but is it truly profitable? Is there sustainable profit there? And that's a question I wanted to kind of explore here. But before we do that, let me introduce Stefano Fanfarillo, who is a partner and director at BCG based out of New York and is a core member of BCG's marketing, sales, and pricing practice. He's an expert at personalization and digital marketing with a focus on digital transformation, customer data management, marketing technologies, and operations. He's had more than 20 years of experience across different verticals such as telco, financial services, retail, and CPG. And that's super exciting because I've worked with companies in all of those sectors and excited to hear more. But before I share my intro, Stefano, maybe you can give a quick background on yourself.
Thank you, Emad. Thank you for having me here. I'm not sure there's a lot to add. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I've been doing this for just over 20 years now. Always on the consulting side. This is my third large consulting firm, Boston Consulting Group. I was with other before, and always in that CRM, customer relationship management, marketing, digital transformation agenda. And I've done that across different sectors, telcos, retail, financial services, and CPGs, and so on. And always been very, very interested into the customer value management agenda and how to drive profitable customer interactions. And so very excited with this topic. And Emma, you and I have been talking for the last few weeks on this, and excited to be here.
Awesome, thank you. And most of you guys know me. My name is Emad Hasan, one of the co-founders at Retina. And at Retina, we focus on early customer lifetime value measurement and LTV optimization for ads and customer acquisition. Prior to running Retina, I spent 2 years at Facebook, a year at PayPal in marketing measurement and customer segmentation, retention type strategies at PayPal. And then before that, a lot of my time as an engineer on electronic control systems for helicopters and satellites. And that nerdy engineer inside me is still alive. I still get to do some coding time to time, which I'm very excited about. But with that, let's go to our agenda. So it shouldn't take us more than a total of 45 minutes today. We'll cover some really interesting topics to begin with. I'll introduce the topics, and we'll try to spend 10 minutes on each one of the topics. We'll keep it similar to our previous webinars where we'll introduce a topic, share some thoughts. I'll have Stefano share his views on it as well. And then what we want is some audience participation. So use the chat window, use the Q&A window in your Zoom to try to ask questions. I will ask questions from the audience, and I'm hoping that some of you will participate. And then at the end of all of the 3 topics that we're going to cover, I'd love to leave some time for Q&A. If there are any questions that go unanswered during the presentation, we can discuss this. What I'm also interested in is the fact that like what we're going to talk about, by no means are we the experts on that topic. Like we know a little bit about it, but I think audience participation would be really fun to like see how other companies and people are thinking about some of these topics as well. So with that, let's get started. Here's what another like piece of news that got me motivated about this. So Wayfair is a company that we have been following for quite a while. And what was really interesting about it is they had been showing a lot of growth, but a lot of their growth in the past, like we didn't see a lot of great retention. But very recently, they shared this announcement showing that they have become profitable for the first time in many years. And this got me thinking, like, what might be going on? So there are like two opinions I have. One is obviously there's a lot of demand in e-commerce, and also you cannot buy furniture anymore in store, so you have to buy it online. So there is demand there, but there's also probably lower customer acquisition cost. But the question I have in my head is this something that they can continue to do? And Stefano, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think that's a great one, and I think you're absolutely right. I think obviously there's been a huge upsurge in e-commerce, and so they benefit from that, and as a consequence of that as well, I would expect, as you said, the lower acquisition cost. I think to your point in terms of being able to sustain, I would think that it lies down into their ability to nurture the customers they've acquired, right? In the last few months, it is definitely, in my mind, the key element for them to sustain profitability. Will they be able to grow them and actually leverage the data that they now build out, given the amount of customers they have, the amount of commerce that they're driving, and helping them driving down acquisition costs, as well as cross-sell and upselling opportunities, really leveraging the data asset that they now built.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's introduce our topic to talk about that. Like, what does it mean to be profitable at the unit economics level, and what does it mean to be profitable at the customer economics level? So first thing I want to share, this is the only equation I'll share in this whole presentation, so don't get worried. But basically, going back to first principles, how do you compute profit? So on the profit side, the revenue part is somewhat simple at the order level, and then the cost is a little bit more complicated. Typically, we want to consider break cost down into fulfillment, inventory, and I like to read this equation from bottom to top, because then you start to break down like what might be going on. And I have a question, by the way. So for the audience, I'm going to share the question in the panel, and would love for you guys to think about an answer by the end of this slide. But the ones that we typically consider are fulfillment cost, inventory cost, cost of restocking, appeasement, returns, credit card fees, taxes, and shipping fees. But there are probably a couple of costs that I'm not considering here. What might those be? If you guys could share those in the chat window, that'd be awesome. And Stefano, maybe while we wait for these to come in, what are the ones that you think? Actually, I see a few really interesting ones that have come in. Some folks are saying customer acquisition cost. That's definitely the one I wanted you to catch. Packaging costs, deprecation for perishable or cyclical goods. Okay, that makes sense. Delivery cost. Delivery costs we consider under shipping. But yeah, these are really good. What might be missing? SG&A, overhead. Those are good. What else might be missing, Stefano? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think those are the great answer. I mean, to me, overall, is that marketing cost, right? To acquire customers, to retain customers, and so on. That doesn't seem to be included here. And I'm sure where you probably going to go is when you look at that unit product cost, it's not necessarily something that comes naturally into that equation, right? So, but definitely the marketing costs and the different type of businesses, and therefore they incur those costs in different ways. I like think about, for example, a handset subsidy for a telco, a very low cost first year subscription for a magazine, a free reason to sell blades, and so on. Those are all these kind of acquisition marketing costs.
Yeah. Exactly. What about the revenue side? Like, is there, like, I suspect there's different types of revenue as well that we may be not considering.
Yeah, I think if you take the revenue from a product, when you look at the product in isolation, everything is geared around that product, right? The cost of the product and the revenue that the product generates. So basically the sales minus the cost of the product. So I think that's a natural inclination as you think about product. If we take into account potential revenue that can be generated, I think we need to switch our perspective. Right? We need to look at the customer, not at the product. Then when we start looking at the customer instead of the product, then we open up different opportunities, right? There are servicing opportunity, cross-sell, upsell opportunities, and so on and so forth. Therefore, is that opportunity automatically creates that opportunity to generate this incremental revenue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. So at the end of the day, this unit level economics is the SKUs you're selling, are they profitable or not, is what we're considering here. The next one we're going to talk a little bit about today is, are you profitable at the customer level? And this is one of my favorite charts where you plot customer lifetime value for every single customer that you have, from their lowest LTV to their highest LTV. And you can, on the y-axis, you have your customer lifetime value. And exactly as folks mentioned, what is the acquisition cost? So the acquisition cost, if you have great attribution, you can plot it for every single customer, but if you don't, then you can compute average customer cost and plot that. And the way we think about this is, if I take the area under the curve for all of my customer lifetime value and then subtract out the area under the curve under acquisition cost, and that is a positive number, then I'm also customer level profitable, not just unit level profitable. And the problem that you can imagine is, if you are selling anything between $5 and $150 in terms of your SKU pricing, it's very likely, if you're acquiring customers directly on Google or Facebook, you're probably not profitable at the first purchase. That's why customer lifetime value is an important metric here to think about. Any other thoughts on this one, Stefano?
Yeah, apology for the background noise. Timely fashion when you're working from home. But yeah, if I think about, absolutely, in particular when you think about the revenue aspect, obviously there's the revenue from the customer, but then there is potentially incremental services that you can think about. So I'm thinking about the y-axis, right? That lifetime value. So incremental services, cross-sell and upsell opportunities that you can drive throughout the lifetime value of that customers. And then another aspect to one could associate a particular customer is even recommendations, right? Recommendations that a customer can make to attract and acquire another customer, like get member, or social media effect, for example, if you think about a restaurant, say. So I think there is a lot that can go into that customer level unit economics. The moment we switch our mindset to go from a product perspective to a customer level perspective, there's a lot more that we can build into that in terms of potential revenue that a customer can generate in the lifetime.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I like thinking about this, because what we found is that companies can be profitable at the unit level, could be profitable at the customer level, or both. And like, how do we think about this? And this is where I'd like to introduce a new framework that we've been, I shouldn't say new, but like, it's a framework that we think about quite a bit at Retina, but we've been chatting about, which is, you could be profitable at the unit level, you could be unprofitable at the unit level, you could be profitable at the customer level, or unprofitable. And which quadrant do you fall in, and should you fall in? So the no-brainer part is, obviously every business wants to be profitable at the customer level and the unit level, but you may not start out that way. In fact, most businesses, I would contend, when they are startups, very early days, are in the unprofitable both at the customer level and unprofitable at the unit level. This is why investments actually happen, because you're spending that money building the product and subsidizing products, subsidizing customer acquisition. And the companies I think about, and I'll start at this bottom left quadrant, startups. So think about PayPal. PayPal was literally giving away money to acquire customers. They would pay people $15 to open an account when they first started. Uber, giving away $50 gift cards for you to try Uber. Uber and Lyft had they were unprofitable at the customer level when they started, and unprofitable. They were paying drivers more. So on every ride, they were losing money. And that's pretty crazy to think about that happens, but it happens in most startups. Certainly not a place where you want to be. By series like E of your fundraising, generally, like, you've figured out which direction you're going, but generally they'll transition out to one of these two other quadrants and go from there to eventually becoming profitable. We're gonna spend quite a bit of time on this quadrant chart. So if you have any questions as we are talking, please start to put them in the chat, and then at the end of before I move on from this slide, we're gonna try to answer those. But Stefano, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the other two quadrants that in my mind get a little tricky.
Yeah, I mean, so if I take, for example, the let's say unit profitable and customer unprofitable, those are probably what we want. Oh, sorry, well,
you want to start whichever one you want to start
yeah
with.
Sure. So yeah, the loss leaders, right? So if we think about unprofitable unit and profitable customers, those are your typical scenarios, say, where a company sells a product at a loss with intention to acquire a customer to sell incremental products, services through the life of the relationship, right? If you think about the razor and blades relationship, the printer and toner cartridges, or a great example for me is the retailer discounting a specific product to generate foot traffic, but eventually the overall basket size for a customer is profitable, right? So those are some of the scenarios where we see that, right? Kind of the company selling a particular product at loss, but then eventually through the lifetime of the customer, through customer life cycle management strategies, be able to drive profit out of the customer, right? Like cross-sell, upsell, and so on. The other one that we kind of call the growth companies, right? So this is where we have unprofitable customer, but the product itself at the unit level is a profitable product. And so those are companies where typically the customer acquisition cost for this organization is very high. So even if the product unit cost is profitable, overall the customer could be unprofitable, at least let's say for the terms of an initial contract, say a subscription business, or a minimum when a company needs to achieve a certain volume of customers. The one that comes to mind, for example, is a telco operator. The unit cost of a call, it's close to zero, but they charge you, X amount of money. At the same time, of course, a telco operator has very high fixed costs, right? The fact of building, maintaining, managing an overall network, and therefore that type of company obviously needs to reach a certain volume of customer to obviously achieve profitability, right? So to overcome those costs, the fixed costs that they have. So basically, companies in that quadrant need to build volume and longevity in the relationships, right? Customers will turn profitable if they stick with the product or service. Example of streaming companies is another great example, right? Obviously, signing up may be profitable on a unit level, but at the beginning, the customers may not be profitable as such unless you achieve a certain longevity, because there is a pretty high acquisition cost. In particular, if you look at what's going on in the market at this stage, very, very competitive environment right now, the acquisition costs are very high for those organizations. And as I say, the volume is also required to achieve the profitability. As I mentioned, the telco example, on a unit cost basis, a product may be profitable, but on overall the customers may still be unprofitable if the organization doesn't have enough volume to cover the fixed costs required to provide the service. Another example could be a magazine subscription, right, which needs to reach a a certain subscriber volume to say attract advertiser and charge a premium for the ads, right? Similarly, Facebook, right? Facebook, if you think about the growth, each unit may be profitable, but then it needs to achieve a certain volume to make it attractive from a network perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about the streaming businesses right now. Like we got Netflix, Hulu that were the incumbents, and now you have Disney Plus, you have Apple TV, and you have Peacock, all vying for time. They've invested a ton of money into content, and Disney Plus recently, right? I saw an article about their launch of Hamilton as a content piece, and all of a sudden they're using that as a driver to get a lot of customers to come in the door. And their strategy is very different from let's say Apple's strategy of 1 free year of trial. So Apple said, hey, look, you get 1 year of free trial where they're losing money, unit economic loss, but customer wise may be profitable. But whereas Hamilton's a different strategy, Disney Plus went with a different strategy.
Yeah, it's a great example. I mean, fantastic example. I mean, we can see that right now live, and it's you know, you can imagine the acquisition cost of these organizations must be huge. But they're obviously betting on the market taking shape and retaining those customers, and also cross-sell services, right? I mean, even the initial subscription could be very low. The entry subscription could be very low. I don't know, $4.99, whatever the number is. But then obviously the ambition is for them, as they attract a subscription base, to cross-sell them or incremental services, take up that subscription to, I don't know, whatever the number is going to be, $15 and whatever.
Yeah. There's a very special case of this that I want to chat with you about. But before that, let's see if there are any questions that anyone has on the chat that's related to this before we move on to that special case. Are there any? Let me read out the question. Are there any innovative ways traditional packaged goods with no D2C, little first-party data, and POS data calculate customer lifetime value to arrive at customer level economics? Any thoughts on this, Stefano?
It's a great question. I don't think there is a great way to do that. It's almost like the opposite, in the sense that what we've seen at the moment, companies, CPG companies in particular, trying to move in one shape or form into more of a DTC type model, so that they can start collecting that data, they can start building this direct relationship with their customers, and then be able to nurture that base. Some great example out there, obviously, the blades, razor and blades example, Harry's, and the other one that go
Dollar Shave Club.
Dollar Shave Club, thank you. Those are, to me, great example where CPG companies, or obviously startups, and then being acquired by CPG, have taken this initiative or start selling products directly in a subscription model. And then really one of the key ambition, of course, is to create that direct to consumer relationship and building that data. Another example I've seen lately is Ready and Refresh from Nestle. You can now subscribe to a delivery model for their products, you know, Perrier, San Pellegrino, and different beverages, coffees, and so on. And so again, they're going directly to consumer with a subscription model. So again, they are exploring those aspects. Another area that we have seen is companies creating specific experiences to attract that direct relationship to consumer. The one that comes to mind, for example, is Scott's, the seeds company, the company that sells the
Miracle
seeds.
Grow, Scott's Miracle Grow,
And you know, they have an app, they have a site where you go in there, you sign up, and they, you know, you basically give them your location, the parameters of your the loan, and so on, and they give you a low maintenance plan or something like that, which really helps you with the low maintenance, but of course, at the same time, provides recommendations on which product you need for that maintenance plan. And either you can buy them online directly, or you can walk to Home Depot with that list and say, okay, I want this product. And I literally did that. I gave it to my wife and said, okay, if you could go to Home Depot, please. This is the one. I gave her a picture. I don't even know what it is, but I'm told I need one of those. And so I think those are some of the other examples that we see where companies are creating those experiences. And even if they're not necessarily selling products, they are building that direct to consumer relationship, and they start building some data assets to learn more about the consumers, the value those consumers derive. Another example is in the beauty products, the likes of L'Oreal or Estee Lauder, creating apps where you input, for example, your skin tone or something. They make recommendation on skin products and so on. Again, those are very useful, relevant experience for the user, and the key objective, the key goal for them is to capture that data, collect data about the customer.
Yeah. Well, this leads right into my next topic on this, which was customer packaged goods and and D2C business. They are almost at the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to this data. And you had mentioned like them going into omnichannel. One clever way that I've seen companies do this, and we're actually helping a pretty large CPG company on this, is being able to use panel data that is available through Nielsen's of the world, Numerator, IRIs of the world. So there are a few of these companies that have relationships with the large, big box stores and being able to see it from there. I think the hard part is customer identity resolution. Like that's the one that like still, like, I think it's clever that we can use panel data to get to a sense of what the customer lifetime value is. Another one is a very amazing, really fast growing vitamin company here in Los Angeles that we've chatted with, and we've seen a lot of their work. We really like how they think about this. They've been like thinking about, they sell to Costco and they sell on Amazon, but they're able to like think through this at like even using that data, trying to estimate at the population level what the estimated LTV might be, and they're thinking about this problem quite a bit at least. So top of mind for sure for a lot of companies. What's anything else on this this topic on the chasm of data that needs to be like that needs to be bridged for consumer packaged goods? One of the things that you and I had chatted about when we were preparing for this webinar was being product focused versus or brand focused versus becoming customer focused. So like one option it seems like CPG companies have is to like just focus on product and like which product sales are continuously selling. Like what's the concept behind that?
Yeah, I think I agree, right? I mean, this is not necessarily the right thing for everyone. Right? If I think about CPG, sorry, typically in a CPG, the costs and revenue are associated with our product and brand, right? It's product focus, it's brand strategy, it's brand media marketing. They have no data, they have distance from the consumer, from the ultimate consumer. So although we give some example on how they're trying to close that distance to learn more about the consumer. But generally what we see, the key focus is driving cost efficiencies and scale and marketing efficiencies, right? So, and scale is also generally measured in terms of product units going out of the door. So product volume becomes the goal, right? So this is how you drive efficiency, you reduce the cost per unit, and therefore you make that product unit profitable. That's the discussion we were having before. If I think about instead a subscription model, the cost and revenue, it's almost the opposite end, right? The cost and revenue are typically associated with the customer. So it's customer focused. It's about CRM strategies, is customer acquisition cost. So a direct to consumer, well, one is they have a direct to consumer relationship. They have rich data available to them. And the key focus is typically on reducing the customer acquisition cost, increasing the value of a customer, and retain the customer for as long as possible so that you increase the customer lifetime value. And so the scale, when I think about scaling these businesses, is generally measured in terms of customer volume, right? So the number of, for example, number of active customers on Facebook. And so the customer volume becomes the key. So again, two polar opposite, right? On one end, we have product volume, product scale being the focus, because the focus is reducing that cost to produce a product and push it out the door and obviously sell it at a margin. On the other end of the scale, we have customer volume becoming the key, a number of active users, and because you need to reach that volume to make the service attractive, and again, different business model, right? Advertising, whatever that is, and subscription model. So definitely too extreme, and you know, and it's been interesting, those middle ground that we talked about earlier around the subscription model, CPG, selling a subscription model base and so on. Definitely those are somewhere in the middle that trying to kind of bridge the gap between the two.
What do you think about, so there are two, anybody else who has any questions for me or Stefano, or have any thoughts just to be shared with the group, please share it on the chat. And while you do that, I had two thoughts that come to mind that I think are interesting. One is the big behemoth that's not talked about often, which is Amazon. And seems like, at least for CPG retail, Amazon is becoming a very big player, and I don't know if it's like a partner or somebody that like just takes away share. And I spent some time in I've read this book called the Everything Store, which is a lot about Amazon, and they talk a lot about how they basically stole business, completely shut down pets.com, and even the diaper, there's a diaper company they were competing against. Wow. Is this and what they did is just they just outgunned them both in terms of strategy and like just investment into like stealing on all the customers. And my fear is that this is going to continue to happen, you know, and maybe they're the likes of like the Costco's of the world that are maybe somewhat immune to it. But what about that, the Amazon behemoth that is just stealing away value from any value that like the manufacturers might have, and just trying to pass it down to the consumer completely?
My thoughts on that, definitely. I mean, Amazon is tough. It's a phenomenal company, right? They've been taking over multiple markets, and they've been creating markets. I mean, the cloud business has been was created by Amazon, right? And so, yeah, definitely very, very difficult to compete with them. As you know, now the next target I can see, because now I see the Amazon Prime van making the delivery, right? So the next target is probably the logistics companies that they're gonna go after. I think a couple of thoughts on that in terms of you know, competing. To me, one is an aspect of specialization, right? Being more of taking that niche and be very specialized in that niche, and be Amazon in terms of being able to provide a specialized service. I think, for example, Wayfair is a great example, right? Where they're taking a niche around home furnishing and home design and so on, and they really specializing on that. And you know, you now go there. For example, that is become top of mind in many cases, if you're looking for that particular product, right? As opposed to any product, you know, you can go and search in Amazon. But when you start, if we can start seeing that differentiation in the market and specialize in that niche, then you have an opportunity to create space for yourself. And the other strategy I can see is going ahead against it, and the one that I can see doing that, the large player in the country, right? Similarly, almost similar to an Amazon, right? The Walmart, the Kohler, and so on, Kroger, sorry. And so those are the companies that are probably going head to head, but that I don't have a crystal ball, but that could be a race to the bottom, right? Where, because it becomes, you know, the 2-day delivery, then the 1-day delivery, then the 2-hour delivery, and so on. So you imagine the cost going up on a direct competition basis.
Yeah. I mean, to me, what's really interesting is that they're starting to own the they own the customer relationship at this point, in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them doing, like, I've never seen a Amazon retention email, and they have a specific policy not to ever do that. On top of that, they're also becoming the place where you give them their advertising dollars, and that part is growing really, really fast. It's going to be really fascinating to see where that ends up. Anyway, let's keep moving on. I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about customer loyalty improvement. So there's some really interesting. I think your experience here, Stefano, I think is be super relevant. And I remember reading an article you wrote that talked about increasing customer spending for retail businesses and store where you had worked with a next best action, and giving that type of a campaign helped increase spend by 15%. Tell me a little bit about that example. Like this, I think this one's super interesting to me
Yeah.
because we think a lot about customer retention and revenue expansion. But how did this come about? What was the story behind this?
Yeah, I think, and this is one of the examples. But as a matter of fact, in the last few years, we've been doing a lot of work in the retail sector, and it's a great segue from the Amazon conversation. I think a lot of, in particular, brick and mortar retailers, have been obviously for years now, be waking up to that need to really leverage their data and that the whole digital transformation agenda. I think Amazon, I would say Amazon has been, at least on a good way, the catalyst behind that for sure, right? They've really been going after their business, and therefore they've been waking up now. A lot of them are building really rich data sets through loyalty programs, to different means of collecting that data, and really starting to build the skills and capabilities to mine this data and be able to deliver better customer experience. So in essence, that's what we've been doing with a bunch of retailers, actually, really helping them taking advantage of the data that they have, the customer base that they have, and really exploiting that data to drive more business value, better experiences for their customers as well. Many retailers we've been working with really focus on that better experience. And then the key difference, especially if I think about brick and mortar, key difference that they have on Amazon, that they do have the bricks. And so they do have that opportunity to deliver a better experience. But I think some of them struggle with that digital and physical relationships, and so that's where we've been doing a lot of work and helping them combine those experiences from an omni-channel perspective, deliver a overall better experience for their customers, and hence deliver more value from what they've been doing. And really, I'd say a digital and data-driven transformation. That's really been the core of the work we've been doing the last few years with retailers.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the part that I'm interested in is post-acquisition, increasing value seems to be a very ambiguous challenge to me. And I've been chatting with a professor out of Harvard Business School, Eva Ascaraz, who's been looking at the effectiveness of increasing retention. And it's very clear that that there are two components. One is understanding the customer's state. Like, are they at risk? Are they ready to churn, or are they an active customer? That's obviously a very good decision maker in how companies are doing retention and increasing LTV campaigns. But what she found is that there's another big factor, which is their sensitivity to marketing campaigns, their likelihood to react to those. And that is another huge factor. So just because somebody's likely to churn, sending them a retention offer is actually not necessarily going to save them. But if you use some other signal to understand what their sensitivity to react to any kind of a marketing, if you can use that signal, then you have a lot more. You're able to be a lot more targeted and give the offers to the right people without actually wasting a lot of the retention incentive dollars.
Yeah.
Have you guys run into that issue yet?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic point, actually, and especially if I think about those direct-to-consumer subscription-type businesses as well, right? So one aspect which is very important for this type of business is this ability to operationalize the use of customer lifetime value. So let's say, for example, let's take a retention scenario. Customer calls the cable provider to disconnect the service. And so how much is that particular customer worth to this organization? Can the service agent see that? How much should we offer or invest to retain this customer? Does the service agent have the ability to see that and decide based on this value? And how can we differentiate based on value and act differently at the point of interaction? Is the customer service agent incentivized to retain for the right value? So those are some of the key challenges we've seen when you really taking those concepts that we've been discussing until now and trying to operationalize them really down to the single customer level and to that individual interaction level, right? So if I think about a few years ago, I spent a lot of time helping telcos, building these capabilities to operationalize value-based retention strategies, we call them. So really at the point of interaction, how do you really think about that customer value or know about that customer value and decide how much you want to invest to retain them to actually make that relationship profitable. So we developed investment models and also provide the tools, say, to a service agent to manage for value, right? So those are, I'm thinking about, if I look back, very complex solutions with real-time calculations and so on, but it was very interesting. It was a complete paradigm shift from a volume-based retention strategy. So just throw them anything, but you need to retain as many customers as possible, to a value-based retention strategy, right? Okay, let's really be mindful of how much we want to invest on this particular customer to be able to retain them. And actually the biggest challenge was the user adoption and related incentive models, right? If I think about the actual individual agents and really working with them on adopting those complete different methodology, complete different behavior, complete different way of operating, and start thinking about value instead of just throw the kitchen sink and try and rescue and retain this customer. That wasn't valid anymore, and so we had to work with them in a completely different way.
That's interesting. You mentioned the biggest challenge was like a more human behavior and change challenge than anything else, because I would imagine there's a ton of data challenges, ton of like infrastructure setting up that, but seems like that was not the biggest one.
There were bigger challenges, don't get me wrong, in there, but the way I think it's all bits and bytes, we will always find a way to code it. That's not, human beings are certainly the biggest problem we always face. And behavioral change, it's hard for anybody, including myself, of course. So it's always difficult to, you've been doing that for the last 15 years now. All of a sudden, it's completely different. You can't retain this customer this way anymore. And also, if you think about, it takes time to align the incentives to drive the behavior you want to drive, right? So that's another aspect that was very challenging, to make sure that the incentives were correct. The behavioral change were correct, because there's always some consequences that you don't think about, and you only see them once they happen. And so obviously that took a lot of piloting and exercising and a lot of change management activities, basically.
Awesome. Well, why don't we do this? I see we're kind of running out of time, but let's capture the key concepts that we should take away from today. And then I see 3 questions in the Q&A panel that we can answer right after that. And also encourage you guys to ask any other questions or bring up any topics of discussion, and we can use the last 10 minutes for that. But obviously, going back to our key point, which is I aim to have positive economics at the unit and the customer level. It's not an or question, but and question. And to me, I think about it, are all my units profitable? And the ones that are not profitable, do we know an exact reason why? I'll give you an example of this, where I remember we were working with an e-commerce company, and one of their products that they were shipping was sized incorrectly so that they would the customer would never run out of the product. And they were like, yeah, we don't know why this is a bad product. And we turned out that there's no reason for somebody to come back and buy it because they just shipped a biggest bottle possible of that product. And that made it customer level unprofitable. And then is every customer profitable? So thinking about that, and then focusing on customer relationship and maintaining visibility at the customer level and being top of mind when expanding to omnichannel. And then positive unit economics don't tell the whole story. Acquire and retain high lifetime value customers is obviously a big strategy that we think about. All right, with that, let's open it up to some Q&A. And I don't know, can you see the questions as well, Stefano?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, awesome. Do you want to pick one and answer one of these?
I think we addressed the previous one, right? So could we talk about the growth loop? Yeah, I'm hoping to, I'm interpreting that correctly in the sense of, if I think about the growth loop, I guess the way I'm interpreting it is the customer, the life cycle engagement strategies, right? That's what I'm thinking about. So if I think about it, so there is no one lever that solve for every problem, right? So if I think about especially when we think about customer value, we're talking about acquisition, growth, and retention. So those are the kind of main strategies that we look at. And when we think about acquisition, obviously, first of all, the focus is about how can I get effectiveness and efficiencies out of that acquisition. And we think about efficiency in the terms of, for example, wasted dollars on digital media that doesn't drive the value that you expect to drive, right? In terms of, I don't know, targeting the wrong customer, using the wrong media, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the aspect that we look at in terms of how do you then optimize that spend around your acquisition cost by obviously removing wasted spend and driving effectiveness in the sense of better targeting, better creative, and so on, so that you get that return from that particular spend. And the other aspect then is the in-life type activity. So growing and growing a particular customer base through cross-sell, upsell type activities. And again, this is a typical dynamic that you see in subscription model, model.
I feel like the growth one to me is such a simple one, because at Facebook we thought about growth a lot, and one of the, I'll pick the Hamilton example, right? What is it that's going to generate? What is it about your either marketing or your product that's going to generate a lot of word of mouth? And word of mouth is like, the better you get at that, the lower your customer acquisition cost. And the most recent example that we were talking about earlier is Hamilton. The moment you and it's built in through the product, so you don't need a lot of people to do this, but you start the engine where some number of people go and download or sign up for the service and watch Hamilton. They love it so much that the next 5 days they're talking to all of their friends and family about, hey, did you watch Hamilton? It was amazing, and you must do it. So then it generates a lot of FOMO, and that gets that engine going. There's a really good Y Combinator talk by Alex Schultz on YouTube about growth and the K factor and how to measure it. It's very, very hard to measure, especially if you don't have that kind of like a software, the SaaS type of or a software service business. But having said that, I think that there's plenty of literature on the growth loops that some of these like San Francisco-based consumer companies employ that are very relevant. But I think about that quite often. That's a very good way to potentially manage your customer acquisition cost and get that word of mouth going.
Yeah, I mean, in our in our firm, we call it kind of growth hacking, right? I mean, how do you?
Yeah, growth hacking, exactly. Yeah.
It's for us the whole playbook is basically, and which we do a lot with our clients, is really about very rapid, fast experimentation. So that learning loop, right? Go through that very as fast as you can, so that you can experiment, and most importantly, and sometimes we see organization missing that point, is growing that experiment data. The actual experiment itself give you that data in terms of what worked, what didn't work, which is unique to your company, because you're the one running the experiment, and that to us is so important, so valuable in terms of being able to drive that growth hacking strategy. So I think that's a great question and a great methodology that we see a lot. It's very standard practice. Let's say you mentioned a company in San Francisco, so this newer digital companies, but it's generally very hard when you go to well-established organization, large enterprises. They have their own ways of working, they have their own processes, methodologies, risk aversion, and so on and so forth. So establishing those new methods takes a lot of change management effort. And again, I'm keep on going back to that change management dimension, but I think that's what takes most of the effort when we work with those clients, because it's ingrained in the way they do it, and trying to change that takes a lot of effort for any organizations. Yes.
There's a question by Adam Kaplan that I want to answer. Let's see. I'm going to see what happens if I say answer live. Okay, let's see if I can answer. The question is, we're a young e-commerce startup. Like many, we're dependent on auction-based marketing platforms such as Facebook and Google for low customer acquisition cost. CPMs can swing significantly and affect profitability. However, we need to keep our foot on the gas and maintain the growth momentum. Do you have any recommendations for managing CPM volatility for e-commerce players looking to break their auction-based platform addictions? And what else do you see are good opportunities to achieve this low CAC? Okay, I think this is where Stefano, I've really liked one of your colleagues' article that wrote about margin-based marketing.
Yeah.
I think that was an excellent article. One of our clients, which is a big financial firm, uses this technique. What they do is as soon as they have conversions that are, so let's say they're running campaigns on Google and Facebook, as soon as they have conversions that happen, they measure the value of those conversions in some form or the other, even if it's a rudimentary like understanding of that value. What they're then doing is they're optimizing their ad budgets between campaigns to move towards the higher value campaigns. And the way that they're doing it is they're computing payback periods, and based on payback periods, whichever have the lowest payback periods, moving money more towards those campaigns. And I think that's an excellent strategy. I've only seen like 4 or 5 companies really think about that. But if you think about Facebook and Google, they're selling this CBO concept, campaign budget optimization, day in, day out, but it's focusing on the wrong thing, which is conversions and CPA rather than the value of the conversion. So that's an excellent way, I think, of thinking about what a strategy that can be tried.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, I think we actually, to this specific question, recently, a couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation with a bank asking very similar question, a digital marketing team at the bank. I think a key answer is actually back to the point I was making earlier around that experimentation. I don't think there is a silver bullet answer. Okay, you need to do that.
That's true.
And many times that's the question that comes, so should I spend here or should I spend there? The point that we make to clients is always around building the capability to continuously measure and optimize your spend, right? So it's actually about, being able to continually monitoring, measuring, and optimizing, and it's a live thing. What works today, maybe today, Google search for that particular word is an excellent strategy, but tomorrow it's not, because competitive activity changes, and therefore may make it not anymore, no longer a profitable strategy. So being able to really experiment very rapidly and continuously monitor and measure and change that, it's really the foundational capabilities that we would recommend.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I think we have room for one more question before we have to close it out. And I'll send this your way, Stefano. How do you factor in cost of customer churn into the overall equation?
Yeah, I think, and Emad, you probably are the expert in churn costs, but to me, my experience has been very much around operationalization of the churn management strategies and trying to understand what is the value of that customer and how much then you want to spend to retain them, and the idea is to balance that equation, right? So because what you don't want to do is you don't want to spend more than actually more than the value that customer is going to give you, and the crux then becomes, okay, what is the value of that customer? And we talked about earlier, there are many dimensions you can consider. It could be a value of this particular contract, it could be the lifetime value on multiple contracts. You could add to that, what if this customer generate incremental revenue from recommendations or from incremental service and so on and so forth. So that's what really, to me, the cost of churn is really the crux of it, is that coming down to the value of that customer and then deciding how much do you want to spend to then retain that customer in terms of churn management strategies.
Awesome. That's I think that's a great answer. Well, I think that's all we have time for. Stefano, I want to give a big shout out to you and thank you for joining and participating in the webinar. I want to thank all of the attendees who joined and participated. This was very fun discussion, and I really enjoy like these interactive ones where everybody has thoughts and bringing ideas, because there are things that I might not be thinking about or we might not be thinking about when we're doing these. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Emad. Thank you, and thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.